All right, the regular presentation, the present means are not working, so I'm going to have to do a screencast for this next section. What is evolution by natural selection? And so we need to talk about first the age of the Earth. We're going to come back to this towards the end, but biologists all agree, Earth formed 4.6 billion years ago. And so as you look across here, you can see the different groups. So we've got our reptiles here, flowering plants, and then if you look back, but these just show you the different times when, if you look in the fossil record and other evidence, when different groups of organisms appeared. Again, you can notice prokaryotes first. So when we talk about evolutionary history, we have to talk first about Lamarck and his idea. When you hear of Lamarck, you always need to kind of focus on this idea of acquiring traits. And when you talk about Lamarck, if you see this term acquired characteristics, that is Lamarckian view. And so what Lamarck said was that organisms adapted to their environment. I have a real issue with this idea of adapted to their environment. But his idea was that organisms acquired traits. And so over the course of their lifetime, they would acquire these traits and through use or disuse. So organisms lost body parts because they did not use them, or the constant use of an organ led that organ to increase in size. But if you see acquired characteristics, that's Lamarckian. We're going to focus on Charles Darwin, though. And so when we talk about Darwin, it's real simple. Anytime you see natural selection. And so with natural selection, it's the idea, you probably learned of it as survival of the fittest. That's not the case. It could be survival of the sickest, the smartest, the just good enough. But we talk about Darwin because he really collected a lot of data, a lot of evidence to support his ideas. So when we talk about Darwin, we need to talk about the voyage of the HMS Beagle. Darwin had spent a lot of time doing other things before he figured out what he wanted to do. But about age 22, he was invited to travel around the world. There's Robert Fitzroy, who was the captain. And basically Darwin's job was, the main mission of the Beagle was to chart the South American coastline. So during one of their trips, they stopped, excuse me, I get my pen ready here. Here are the Galapagos. This is South America, so they started here. You can follow the arrows, map, all of this, and they head back over here. So around the world, and they went back, and then they went back to South America. But the key point, you always hear about the Galapagos because Darwin collected a lot of interesting organisms from the Galapagos Islands. While he was there, and while he was looking at the South American coastline, he did come up with this idea of succession of types. Why do we have armadillos are native to Americas, but there's also these fossils? So if there's these fossils, they should be extinct. They should all be dead. So why are there living ones yet they're dead ones? He also took him back to this idea of sloths. I have these giant extinct sloths, these fossils, but yes, there's modern sloths. So this idea that, this kind of gave him the idea that things change over time, or the succession of types. Also in the Galapagos, he gave some unique species. So all of these, right over here, these are his finches. We've got the tortoise, our friends the blue-footed boobies, and of course the marine iguana, which I don't think they're found. Marine iguanas are not too common. But again, he found these all on the Galapagos and not on the continent of South America. When we talk about Darwin, we talk about birds. He collected many different birds on the islands, thought he'd found different kinds. There was finch, there was sparrow, there's warblers, which you can't see on the slide. I'll try to move it down a little bit. Woodpecker, warbler. He's like, all these different types of birds, what are they? He found out that most of them, a lot of them were finches. So he was amazed to find out that all 14 species of birds were finch. We had the large ground finch, the small ground finch, warbler finch, and vegetarian tree finch. If you notice, look at the beaks. I don't know if you can really see them all. I'm going to try to circle them. Remember, structure determines function. Well, they had different beaks because they ate different foods. And so, tree thinking. This is a very famous drawing that Darwin did over here. Let me see if I can circle it for you. Here's the ancestral species, and then he shows how they kind of branch out. And so these four guys here, or gals, I'm not trying to be sexist, all related back to that common ancestor. So, correlation of species to food source, what he found was that the beaks determined, or really the food source determined who survived and who didn't. And so we talk about Darwin's finches, we talk about the differences in beaks. The beaks were associated with eating different foods, survival, reproduction, and beneficial adaptations of food available on the island. So those organisms had the beaks for the environment, survived and reproduced. So we talk about Darwin's finches, small populations of original South American finches on the islands. There was some variation over many generations. The populations, again, the population is the key point there because populations evolve, individuals do not. Accumulated advantageous traits and survived to reproduce. So there's his finches again. And so, again, the key factor here is that their beaks are what allowed them to survive and pass on those traits. He also observed correlation of species of food source. If you look here at the tortoises, the necks are different. So you've got the Pennant Island neck kind of in between. You've got the Hood Island, and then you've got the Isabella Island. But the length of the necks, the Hood Island would be eating vegetation up here. If it was on a tree, it's not a very good tree. You get the idea. Where the Hood or Isabella Island, there'd be a food source towards the ground. And so the necks gave the idea that common species, but then due to environment. So again, this is just showing you more about the tortoises. I'm kind of going fast because I'm limited on time with this. Artificial selection is what humans do. So we look see artificial selection in plants, in birds, selective breeding, and of course in the dogs that we raise with their ancestor, the wolf. So in historical context, if we look at some of these people, which we'll talk about in class, we've got Malthus, this idea of competition. You've got Lyell, change of measurable time, struggle for competition. There's Darwin, and these are just some of the people before him that he used to help support his ideas. So reluctant revolutionary, Darwin was not going to publish his, paper or his idea until after he died, and he actually told his wife, wait till I'm dead. However, along comes Alfred Russel Wallace, and essentially Wallace knew that Darwin was doing a similar paper, so he sent Darwin his actual paper, and Darwin read it, and Darwin was like, oh no, this guy has the same idea that I do. And so he wrote to his buddy Charles Lyell that your words have come true with a vengeance. I never saw a more striking coincidence, so all my originality, whatever it may be smashed. And so after reading Wallace's paper, November 24th, 1859, Darwin published On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, sold out. So, very important slide. You need to know these parts of Darwin's view. You have variation, overproduction, competition, differential survival, and differential reproduction. Once all these things occur, natural selection can occur. And so we'll talk about these in greater detail. We're actually going to do a couple labs where we kind of model natural selection, but these are the key points. You have to have variation, overproduction, competition, adaptations, and then some adaptations become more prevalent. So we look at Lamarck. His was acquired. That's a good idea because those are inherited. And so when we talk about Darwin versus Lamarck, there really shouldn't be a competition, but Darwin's is the one that makes the most sense. And so that was just a quick overview. If you got questions, ask me, but like I said, I had to do this kind of quickly because of time. So hopefully this will help, and that will be it. So good luck as soon as I finish how to